you. Hello and welcome to another edition of Andy Shed Live. This is Series 13, episode number 6 for Sunday the 10th of September 2023. Hello there everyone, welcome to the show on this, middle of September already. If you can hear us squeaking in the background, that's because Thor's found one of his squeaky balls. Haven't ya? Eh? Yes. Sorry about the squeaking, but at least it keeps him entertained. Hello and welcome to the show. We are back with you for another Sunday. It's been a very, very interesting weekend this weekend. For a number of reasons, not the least of which, a friend of mine, Alan in Sheffield, has bought a boat this weekend. Yes, a boat. A canal cruising boat. It's not a narrow boat, but it is a boat that goes on the canal. And hopefully you'll be seeing it soon. Hopefully we'll do a video about it fairly soon. But he's bought a boat, and I had to go with him to go and have a look at it. Last week, sorry, not last week, on Saturday, which was yesterday. So we spent the day looking at a couple of boats, and he decided to buy one that is currently smack bang in the middle of Leeds city centre, and he lives in Sheffield. So you think, oh, that's not far away, don't you? Thor! You have to. So you think, yeah, that's not far away, you think. Thor! So yeah, you think, that's not far away. I'm going to show you out in a minute. Yeah, Leeds is not far away from Sheffield, you think. Sort of 40 minutes to an hour driving, perhaps. That's in a car, though, going up the motorway. On the canal, it's that 40-minute journey turns into 3 days. So we've hopefully got to get it back next weekend, so that there could be some excitement there. Next weekend, so I'm not sure if we'll be on air or not next weekend on Sunday evening, because quite frankly I'm not sure if we'll be stuck out on the canal somewhere. So if we don't appear next week, you know why. Well, rest assured we'll be back the following week if we're not here next week. Thor, do you have to do that? Thank you. Now alright, I'm shutting you out a minute. You stay there. I'm shutting this door a minute so you're not quite as loud. Right. So, yes. So that's what's been going on. I'm just kicking things with my feet now. And stuff all over the place here. Yeah, so that's what's been happening this weekend. So it's been somewhat chaotic. And none of us know anything about sort of piloting a boat. So, basically, it's a very steep learning curve for next weekend. I think the current owner of the boat is going to travel with us, at least for the first bit of the journey back. So yes, it's a very, 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 very steep learning curve. So if you're on the canals anywhere around Leeds next weekend, watch out for us, give us a wave. Right, we're one or two people here in the chat room today. Who have we got in the chat? Wesley's here, Fat Hobbit's here, Dominic's here, Bills is here, Keith is here. Fat Hobbit said, did you get anywhere with your battle with BT, Dominic? And Dominic says, no, not much further, unfortunately. I think the next step is to get a DTMF phone to test further. Dominic says, is that Thor? Yes, it is, Dominic, yes. Bill says, hello Andy, are you a member of the THG? No, Bills, I'm not. You'll find that there are a lot of people who do telephone restoration or telephone collectors who are not a member of the THG. Basically, it's a fairly theoretical organisation, and it doesn't do much practically, from what I can gather. Keith says the canal boats go right by Leeds Station I'd love to see a video with you on the canal in Leeds, Andy. I will see what we can do, Keith. I'll see what we can conjure up. Could do with somebody to film it though. So if you're in Leeds next weekend, you might get roped in. Gambo's here. He says, so a live broadcast via a canal boat next week. Not sure about that, but yeah, possibly. Yeah, you never know. Yeah, might. The thing's a bit loud though, because it's got a diesel engine in it. It's actually got a, what is it? It's a 4-pot 1.7 or 1.8 litre BMC engine, similar to what they put in their cars. And taxis and stuff like that as well. Sounds lovely, but it is a little loud. So yeah, we'll see how it goes next week. We might be broadcasting from a boat, a la Radio Caroline next week. You never know. We'll see how it pans out there next week. That is, who knows what might happen. It's anybody's guess, because Alan used to have a boat on the canal. I'm not saying a canal boat, not a narrow boat, a canal boat. You know, like a cabin cruiser thing. He used to have one years ago, and he's kind of been prompted to get one again. And yeah, basically we've got to go and move it for him. So yes. It's an interesting project. You'll see why next week. Talking of interesting projects, a few weeks ago I started dismantling a Batelite telephone. Can you remember? Can you remember that far back? It seems like ages ago. Started doing it a few weeks ago. It was on here a few weeks ago. And it's on here again tonight. I started on the dial, if you remember. I put it in this box here that had originally contained ice cream. And it was in bits last time you saw it. Now while we've been off air, I've basically put most of this dial back together, and it does now run. I think I showed you this last week. But there it is. See, so it basically works now, which it didn't before. It had got a broken spring in it, and we've done that. And also, this clutch mechanism was totally seized up. Well, that is scrap, basically. But I've got a much more modern dial that has basically exactly the same clutch mechanism in, and I use that to sort it out. I'm just going to change the lighting in here a minute, because doing that should, when the camera settles down, make the lighting a bit better. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so I got this more modern plastic dial, which helped basically. So I used some bits out of that. So now our dial number 12 is pretty much back together. I've still got to sort out the finger plate, because a lot of the paint has come off the back of the finger plate, and I've got to decide what I'm going to do with that. But the dial 12 itself is now sort of okay. Right, what else have we got here? Right, I've got to find some other bits now to it. Just bear with me 1 second. So another bit that we had on was the internals out of it, which were extremely gunky. Extremely gunky, and indeed still are extremely gunky. There they are. Possibly some of the worst internals out of a telephone I've ever seen. Really, really, really sort of manky and horrible. So we need to sort of take things apart and clean things up a bit on on this, I think, because it really doesn't look good. The internals of this, it does not look good at all. Even the spring in that is not working. So do we use this one or do we replace it with a different one? And I think we will probably end up replacing the unit as a whole. But one thing we're probably not going to replace is the case. So I've got a choice here of a couple of different cases. I've got one here that has got a base plate on it, and is reasonably clean and in sort of semi-sensible condition. Note on the here though, look at those, and they just run into the Batelite. Those hook rest things just go into a Batelite hole on that one. Now let me show you another one that's slightly different. Here's another one, and if you look closely at this one, they go into a hole, but they actually run, and this one in a hole that is sleeved with like a chrome sleeve, so there's like a surround to the case sort of thing on this. But this is unbelievably manky. Absolutely unbelievably manky. So I'm going to show you tonight how we clean up Batelite, and it's really, really simple. The way to clean Batelite, and there are a number of things you can do, but what I start with generally, like I start with on most phones, is Brasso, and give it a shake up. If you can't find Brasso around in its liquid form, if you can only find the wadding stuff, try using T-Cut. If you can find T-Cut at your local car auto supplies place, but I'm using a bit of a Brasso here. Just get it on an old cloth and the difference will be amazing. Now I've not done this on this, folks, I just know it'll work, but you just rub it on there, and the instant change is incredible. Now although that changes instantly, it can, if you don't polish it at least a bit, it can go white again when it dries. So do polish it a bit like that, then use a different part of your cloth and then get the Brasso off. So you're now polishing off the Brasso. You don't have to go to people like Greygate and buy expensive polish or anything like that. Good old-fashioned Brasso does the trick. And you just polish it up until you basically get a shine. Now you might have to do this a time or two, and I'm looking at this now and I'm seeing like bubbles in it that I've never seen in Bakelite before. But there are like bubbles in this. Right, can you see them? If I get them in the right light now, can you see there? Can you see like little round bubbles in it? Now, I've never seen that before in Bakelite. That's odd to me. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It's making me wonder if the thing has been painted. Because Bakelite's a fairly inert material. Now, that's not come up perfectly. It's better than it was, but it's nothing like perfect. But it is a lot better than it was. But why the bubbles? Does anybody know what the bubbles are all about? So what I think we're going to do is just clean all this up as much as we can, and then reassess this case, because I'd quite like to use it because of those plated surrounds there, and I think this is the one that I took the dial out of the other week. But it's all sort of white and mouldy, this case. It looks like it's been stored somewhere damp, which is never really good news. And you put the brasso on, and it when you put it on, it looks magic, but the thing is, it doesn't dry like that. That's the problem. So you do have to polish away at it a bit to get it to dry nice and clean. But it is on its way. Right, I'll just have a look what people are saying in the chat while I'm doing this. Dominic says, I'll definitely have to go to Brum at some point. He says there's more canals than Venice in Brum. Yeah, but a lot of them are narrow and designed for narrow boats in Birmingham, so they're only about 7 foot wide. This boat is 10 foot wide that Alan's bought, so it's a little bit wider than a normal narrow boat. I'm calling it a fat boat. It's not quite a wide beam. If you're a boaty person, you know what a wide beam cruiser is. It's not quite a wide beam, but it is wider than a narrow boat. And a lot of the canals around Birmingham, and indeed the canals here in at Chesterfield and that, only fit narrow boats up to 7 foot wide. So there are going to be certain places where Alan can't go with his boat, which is a bit of a shame, but yeah, there you go. Yeah. Fat Hobbit says about this phone, he says fire damage may have caused the bubbles. That's an interesting thought, Fat Hobbit. That's a very interesting thought. Vlad is here. He says, is that water damage or just dirt, Andy? I think it's damp damage, Vlad. I think it's been stored somewhere damp. Or if it has been in a fire, as Fat Hobbit says, and the fire brigade have come along and put water on it, then it will have got wet. So yeah, that is a distinct possibility. But I would say it's been in a damp shed for a lot of years, or something like that. It's kind of what it looks like. This probably actually looks better on YouTube than it is. It's not coming up perfect, but it would be better if you took more time over it probably than I'm doing, which is the get out they always used to use when they made something on Blue Peter, if you remember. You can take more time over this, so yours will come out better. And here's one I prepared earlier, but yeah, I'll be the first to admit this is not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was. But you get the idea of the power of Brasso, and I don't think Brasso's as good as it used to be. I don't think Brasso is as abrasive as it used to be, although it still smells the same and it still looks the same. I don't think it's got the abrasive quality it used to have. I think it's done more chemically now than with abrasives. It definitely seems different compared to how it used to be some time ago. But it is making a difference to it. It is making a difference. It's getting better. You can see the front has gone a bit white again where it's dried. In fact, it's gone a lot white again. And I can scratch it off there with my fingernail sort of thing. If it needs something a bit more abrasive than this Brasso on it. Let's give it a good old scrub and see what happens. Just recently on eBay there seem to have been quite a lot of Batelite phones at a not very high price. I mean, this is part of a box of bits basically that I got a few weeks ago. Plenty of dirt coming off, but it does make a difference, but not as much difference as I would like. But I'm not the sort of person who's got the patience to sit polishing for hours and hours and hours and hours. I like it to be fairly quick results. Yeah, it's definitely bubbly. I wonder why that is. That is very strange. That is very peculiar. Yes. Interesting. It's odd. But it's also filthy. You can see you can scratch some of the white off with your fingernail. Right. What are folks up to? That says, sorry I'm a bit late. My brain is melting. Why is your brain melting? Vlad, is it due to the heat? Fat Hobbit says, do you know which canals you can take the fat boat on? Leeds to Manchester. Going the other way, we sort of know where we can go, because the Canal and River Trust does have a website with a sort of interactive map on that tells you the details of different stretches of canal, sort of how deep they are, how wide they are, how much clearance there is under the bridges, etc, etc, etc. But it's all on an interactive map online. Now they used to, says he, he used to do what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm sorry, the brasso's going up my nose. They used to do a book, you know, a bit like a road atlas, but for canals and that. And I don't know if they do this book anymore. I can't find anywhere that seems to be selling a modern copy of this book that's an atlas for canals. And Alan said, well, maybe it's just online now. You know, in the internet age, maybe they just have it on the website, and the Canal and River Trust do have it on the website. But if you're on a blooming canal boat out in the middle of nowhere, even if you've got a mobile phone, you know, you might not have signal, so you really do need it in a book. So if they don't do it in a book anymore, I'm thinking of compiling a book that is a kind of road atlas to canals, because somebody needs to do it. If it's not done, somebody does need to do it, and it might as well be me. So I am thinking of doing that. It's another one of these projects where something happens, you know, yeah, it is. Does this happen to everybody, or is this just me, where you set out to do something, and as you're doing it, you suddenly realise that there's some kind of sideline to it that is a really good idea, and think, oh, nobody seems to have done this. Why has nobody done this? Somebody ought to do this. Can I do this? And you end up with lots and lots and lots and lots of projects to do. That's why these days I hardly watch any TV. That's why I'm still often tapping away at my computer at gone midnight. And people say, aren't you in bed? I go, no, of course I'm not in bed. I don't go to bed until about 3 o'clock in the morning. As my friend Kat used to say, there's plenty of time for sleeping when you're dead. She was a cheerful soul. Yeah, but this thing about the canals, is there like a Collins Atlas for waterways in the UK? Do they still do it? Is it up to date? And if they don't do it, do you think there'd be a call for one? Because I think there might. A little pocketbook thing. So yeah, we're looking at it as a possibility. Well, that's starting to look better on that side, isn't it? See if we can get some of this horrible brown stuff off the bottom here. It is unbelievably dirty, this. So over the last couple of weeks I've been learning to do fiberglass work as well, which is quite handy now that Alan's bought a fiberglass boat. So I'm pondering the possibility of casting some things in fiberglass. Definitely starting to look better. There, you see where it's dried here? That's where the brasso has dried before I've had a chance to polish it off. If I don't polish that off, it should be better underneath. Like the other side, it's better, but it's not perfect. Right. There. It's gone quiet outside. I'd better see what Thor's doing. Are you alright there? Oh, here he is. Here he comes. Hello. You alright? Good boy. You've gone quiet, haven't you? He's down here. Yeah. Are you going to jump up and say hello? No. Okay. It says he's not jumping up to say hello today. I think he might want to go outside. Do you want to go outside? Let me let the doggy out just a sec. Good boy. Here's your bowl, look. Oh, ball. He's laid against the door, but he says he doesn't want to go out just at the minute. So there you go. Right. Is it looking better to you than it did? What do you think? Definitely better, isn't it? I say it's not perfect still. It's still filthy on the top there and on the back, but it's better than it was. So yeah, but the bubbles are something I've not seen before. I wonder if it is caused by heat. But it's equally filthy on the inside as well, as you can see from that. So I reckon it's been stored somewhere damp. It may even have been underwater, because where the base has been on it, this is like rust that's going up the side of this. So I wonder if it has been underwater, or like in like an inch of water or something like that. So it just goes up the bottom bit of the sides there. I don't know, but that would explain a lot if it has been in water about the condition of the internals, wouldn't it? Because I have never seen internals to one of these that are that grotty. It really does have to be seen to be believed how absolutely loppy these are. I mean, if I can get this in focus for you, you can then see that it is just absolutely hanging filthy. Yeah, just look at the state of it. Whether those coils and that still work is anybody's guess. That doesn't seem to want to move. That seems stuck. Let's have a little look at that, shall I? But that does look like it is almost certainly stuck. Yeah. So yes, grotty is not the word for it. It really isn't. It is very, 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 very grotty. So what I think we'll do is we'll take off this dial thing. So we're going to have a look which way around these are. These dial connections: blue, grey, brown, pink, orange. So I'm just going to note that in my little book here that I've got, which way round they are, because I can never remember which way round dial connections generally are. So let's note it as 3 dial connections. So you've got your thing that is that sort of shape. And you've got your bells under here like that, and here you've got your thing with your dial connections on. It's got 5 those on, and it is blue, grey, or slate as they like to call it. Blue, slate, brown, pink, and orange. So I now know which way round those connections are for. I can get the book under the camera. I now know which way round those are for future reference. Right. And if you're liking the fountain pen, I found this when I went to the Sheffield Model Engineers place at Door a few weeks ago to their big summer open day enthusiasts weekend thing. I bought a box of assorted junk and tools and things, and in the bottom of the box was this fountain pen. But it needs a new filler lever on it there. So if anybody knows where I can get a lever filler for a fountain pen, please do get in touch, because I need one. So that is that. So what I'm going to do now is just try and take these off, and I need a bigger screwdriver to get these off because they are stuck solid. And the thing is, if I go and get a bigger screwdriver, I will disturb Thor, which I don't particularly want to do while he's quiet. So yeah, because I don't want to disturb him while he's not being any trouble, you see, while he's not squeaking. Because if you disturb him when he's not squeaking, he starts squeaking. So that'll be my next job to do. Then off air we will get that little wiring loom off there, because those little wiring looms are basically, don't think I've got any spares of those, so I do want to reuse that, even if I don't reuse this whole base plate mechanism. And what I'll probably do with this, I have got some spare ones of these that are all built up and should work if they were put in a phone. So what I'll probably do is use one of those just instead of this one, and then this grotty one, I'll take it all apart and see what bits of it are any good. Obviously the bell gongs will be some good and stuff, and clean up the bits that are any good, throw out the bits that aren't any good, and we'll go from there. So yeah, there is stuff to do with it, definitely. Right, what are people up to in the old chat room? Just having a little look. Dominic says, I've got a spare dial 12 somewhere for my 232 restoration project. Hang on to it, Dominic, you will need it at some point, I'm sure. Miguel says Duraglit works to polish Bakelite. Interesting, that's the wadding stuff, isn't it? Is Duraglit wadding the same as Brasso wadding? Because you can get Brasso wadding now in what looks like a Duraglit tin, exactly same sort of tin basically, and it looks the same and it kind of smells the same, so I'm wondering if it is the same. Don't say, just popping out, I'll be back in a bit. Keith says, no Andy, no more new projects. I think he's referring to the idea of the canal book there. Keith says, Collins have an inland waterways map, but not just for canals. Yeah, well, yeah, it wants to be for rivers as well, Keith, yeah. So I will have a look for that, because I thought somebody must do one. So yeah, I'll have a look for that. Whereas it says the induction coil on that phone looks troublesome. I will grant you that it does. It looks very troublesome. If you look at the state of it, yes, this is the induction coil here, and just look at, well, yes, have a close-up look at it and you'll see it's not in the best condition, but I think I have got a couple of spare ones of those. But I've got, as I say, I've got some of these units that are much better than this example, already built up. They've just been taken out of phones, I think. So I'm probably going to just go with one of those and then dismantle this one sort of more at my leisure. So yeah. Gambo says there's no sign of my modern 1984 candlestick phone. He has received an email Wednesday saying it would be posted that day. Yeah, people aren't very quick at posting stuff sometimes on eBay, are they? Oh, Dominic said he's back. That was quick, Dominic. Hopefully it's just the Royal Mail being slow and not a dodgy eBay seller. Gambo says take a photo. That's what I do before stripping a phone, etc. I normally do, Gambo. Yeah, I normally do. Gambo says apparently this eBay seller who's selling this modern candlestick phone has been in the office all week. This was on Wednesday, and would send me proof of postage reference number, but he's still waiting for it. He even emailed Friday and Saturday, but no reply. If it turns out to be a dodgy eBay seller, Gambo, and you don't get any joy out of them, get on here and name them and shame them, because that's what I do. You know, don't let anybody else that watches this this video fall foul of that same eBay seller. I name them and shame them. Bill says I've had no issues on eBay with things being posted. I have to say, over the years I must have bought thousands of things off eBay over the years. If I buy anything online, chances are it probably comes via eBay. And most people you deal with are straight up, honest, and quite a few of them are actually really nice people. But you do get the odd ones, and I think over the years I've probably had 4, 5, maybe 6 that have been just crooked, absolutely bent as an iron bomb note. Real con artists. But when you think it's probably over 1,000 transactions over the space of about 10-15 years, you know, I've been on eBay a long time, then you remember those really bad ones. You remember that 4 or 5, but you don't remember the 1,000 or so that have been alright. And 4 or 5 out of 1,000 is a very small percentage, actually, isn't it? So in general it's okay. Some people are better at communicating than others, though. But I've not had not had many major issues. Dominic's on about things being broken. He says, luckily I've not had any broken phones in the post. If they don't look they have experience in selling phones, I usually send a quick polite message to tell them to pack the handsets off the hook. Yeah, I do exactly the same, Dominic. I've had 1 or 2 things arrive that have been packed with the handsets on the hook, and it damages the side of the case where the handset bashes into it. I normally just send people a message saying I've bought telephones on eBay before, this damage has happened in the post, I believe it can be avoided by wrapping the handset separately. And normally when I send people a message like that, They often send me a message back saying, thanks for the tip off, I've got no idea, and they do send it the way that you asked them to send it. So yeah, it's always worth asking, but I try not to buy them now where they go through the post, because the post is so expensive. So I try to buy things in job lots now, where you're buying about maybe 10 phones at a time, and it's worth your while going to collect them. Bill says, I think I might have bought some things from you, Andy, on eBay. Andy Radio. No, that's not me, Bills. I don't sell anything through eBay. I buy a lot of stuff on eBay. I used to sell a few bits and pieces on eBay occasionally, but I've not done for many years because the fees are just too high and the hassle is just too much going to post things and that. And I hate having to wrap stuff to send it through the post. I just hate doing it. So I generally don't sell anything on eBay anymore. I've not sold anything on eBay for years and years and years and years. So if you bought anything, certainly within the last 5 years off eBay, it's not been from me. Bill says, I always ask the history. The eBayer is not a Scooby-Doo. So I've got some amazing bargains. Yeah, they often don't know. I think a lot of the people that sell stuff on eBay, a lot of the people that sell stuff on eBay, I think, are either antiques dealers who basically operate an eBay shop, or they are people who are clearing out a relative's house who's passed away, and that person's got some old telephones and they put them on and they don't know what they are, but they just think they might be worth a bit of something as a house clearance. And that so yeah, that is generally what happens. There are some people though who put stuff on at absolutely bonkers prices on eBay, and I just laugh and don't go anywhere near them. Who would buy a 700 series phone off eBay for about 80 quid that says this phone has been restored and yada yada yada? You don't know it's been restored. You can't see it. You can't pick it up and take the bottom off it, have a look at it or whatever, plug it in, try it. You can't do that with eBay, can you? So whenever anybody offers me anything, sort of distance selling, either through eBay or sometimes people get in touch with me and say, I've got a load of phones, are you interested, Andy, and stuff like that. I basically say to them, yeah, send me a picture. Then they send me a picture, and if they're all 700 series phones, let's say, and there's a box of 10 of them, I go, well, you've got about 100 quid worth there, because what I normally do is I price them somewhere between £5 and £10 a phone, and say, right, that's what the value is of those. And they say, well, there's people on eBay selling them for like 40 and 50 quid. I say, yeah, but I don't know that those phones you've got are working. You probably don't know if those phones you've got are working, and they're probably not working because a lot of them have probably had the cables cut and stuff like that, so they're not being tested. So I say I have to buy everything as untested. If you want to sell them as working, you test them and polish them up a bit and sell them all individually, and you might get, if you're lucky, 40 or 50 quid for them. But bear in mind, you've got to post them and you've got to spend all your time packaging them and cleaning them and making sure they work and all that stuff. You might get 40 or 50 quid each for them. But if you want to get rid of them all now, today, in a box, don't care if they work or not, they're a tenner each. And most people say, oh, I haven't got time to mess about, give me a tenner each for them. and that's what I do. And in general, the dirtier and grottier a phone is when you get it, the less chance that it's been messed about with at some point in the past. The more chance that you have of getting something original and decent. The more bird droppings there are on it, and the more mould there is growing out of it, the better, because you'll have something original underneath it. Gambo says a 746 Ivory for £200 he's seen the other day. Crikey, that is pushing it to the extremes, Gambo, that is. Did anybody buy it? And he also says there's folks selling phones for £50, and weeks, months later, and they're still selling the same phone for £50. It's true, Gambo. They are. They are. And this is part of the problem. People, genuine people, trying to sell an old phone or even a collection of phones. You know, they might have had a phone collector who's passed away in the family. They know he collected phones, so they have a look on eBay, see what phones are worth, and they get in touch with me. And this happened earlier this year to me. I was contacted by somebody who one of their relatives had passed away, and basically he'd not really been a telephone collector, but he'd been interested in telephony. And he'd been interested in exchanges and stuff like that, so he had got quite a few telephones, some of which were relatively modern, you know, DTMF, push button, quite modern things. But he got a lot of telephones, and they said, can you come and value them for us? Can you give us some idea of what they're worth? And if you want to make us an offer on any of it, you can do. So I went to see them, and sure enough, they stacked them all in his shed. Luckily, they've got a big shed outside; they could stack all this stuff in, and it was kept. And it was a reasonably good shed, so it was reasonably dry and that. And it had got lots of telephones. Most of it was relatively modern, push button stuff, but it has got a few nice things. Got a few 700 series series phones, and a few French phones, you know, the French equivalent of the 700 series, same sort of era. And I said, I'll give you a tenner each for all of them, or actually again between £5 and £10 from each, because they weren't all complete. So I said £5 for that or £5 for that, between a £5 and a tenner each. But then I opened a couple of boxes, and in these two boxes were what looked like unissued 200 series phones, you know, pyramids. And they said, what are they worth? And I said, well, that's a good question. I said, because they were black, and I said a black phone like this normally is worth somewhere between, probably, if it's working, between 50 and 150 quid. I said, but these seem to be in the original boxes, so they're probably worth more. So you're going to get probably 150 quid each for them. They said, well, do you want them? I said, no. I said, because if I was to buy them, I don't know that they're working, and I would have to do work on them, and if I'm going to have to do work on them, I would rather buy one for just like £10 or something and do work on it. Right, just bear with me 1 second. There's a phone call that I've got to take. I'll be back in just a sec. that was the chap on the phone that Alan's buying the boat off, just with some technical details about the engine and stuff, and wanting to know if he wanted it servicing and that. And I don't know the answer, because I don't know if he will want it servicing or if he'll want to do it himself when he gets it. So I've got absolutely no idea. So unfortunately I couldn't really give the guy much of a sensible answer. Yeah. So what were we saying before this? Oh yeah, I was on about these telephones, wasn't I? So I found these two 200 series in the boxes, and I said, well, I'll give you a tenner each for those phones. I said, but I don't want to pay you the going rate for those 200 series. I said, to be honest, you'd be better just putting them on eBay and seeing what happens. So I left those behind because I wanted to be straight with the people, because they were being straight with me. And so as far as I know, they have probably put them on eBay at some point. Gambo says he can't find the very expensive 706, but there's a grey 746 with the orange ring light on the handset for only £169.99. And there's somebody, Dominic says, there's somebody trying to sell an unissued Diacon 706 for almost £300. Yeah, it's just bonkers, isn't it? Dominic says, I wonder whether the price of phones will come crashing down, as most won't bother getting a DTMF converter for VoIP. Yes, I think that will happen, Dominic. I think when these antiques dealers can't buy a phone, or can't buy a box full of phones at an auction that they can sell as working anymore, I think the price will come down. I think that is starting now. I think that's why there's been quite a few relatively cheap Bakelite phones around recently. And Gambo agrees. He says, yeah, I think that's what's happening now. The only peeps after phones are us muppets that love fixing and restoring them. Yeah, well, it's good news, but the thing is, if there's not such a market for phones, then are people just going to throw them in the bin rather than bother putting them on eBay and stuff like that? Basically, when you're coming at it from my point of view of where you're trying to save a bit of history, because I come from a museum and conservation and restoration background, when you're coming at it from my point of view where you're trying to save history and stuff, you end up with loads and loads and loads and loads of them, because you don't end up with just one of each type representative. You think, well, if I don't save that particular one, what's going to happen to it? And so you end up with boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes full of them. And God knows how many Ivory 746s I've got. I've got absolutely no idea. But I'll tell you something, when you put them all in a line, you're hard pushed to find two that are exactly the same. You really are. Dominic says, even worse, there might be a wave of phone lamps. Yes. Well, we've converted things back from being lamps before. I've got some waiting to be done at the minute. Yeah. If somebody converts it into a lamp, at least it's not in a skip. That's the thing about it. I mean, going back to when I used to be involved with the Tramway Museum at Cryche, a lot of those trams that you can ride on today have survived because they were basically stripped to their running gear. The top deck was taken off the bottom deck, put side by side and used as garden sheds and farm buildings and stuff like that. And they might have sat there for 50 years out in the elements. Then somebody from the TMS went along, rescued the bits, put it all back together as a tram, and the trams you ride on today have been put back together from those bits. The Sheffield short canopy car, I can't remember the number of it, the one that I call Little Louis, don't ask why, it's a long story, but that was put together out of bits of 3 different trams. Sheffield 74, that's the one. That was 3 different bits. The truck came from one tram, the bottom deck was another one, the top deck was another one, and one of those bits they think was Sheffield 74, and I don't know which bit it was, but that got reassembled as Sheffield 74, because that's the only way they could get one. It's happened with other things as well. Leeds 399 at Christ is another one that was made out of bits. Chesterfield 7 had been sold as a garden shed or something, and was on a farm or something locally, bits of it, and that was put back together by them. So yeah, they've not always been preserved as trams. A lot of them have survived because they were turned into other things. They were turned into summer houses and garden sheds and chicken coops and stuff like that. Dominic says, I'm going to be doing a bit of volunteering at Crouch using our 2 days of volunteering leave we get from the company. Cool. And enjoy yourself. And that, yeah, you should have a good time, Dominic. Just don't get involved with the politics of the place, because the politics of the place is absolutely insane. A lot of people at other museums, what they always used to say about Christ was nice tram, shame about the owners. Yeah. So, yes. But yeah, that's how things survive, though. They don't always survive intact. They survive in bits and get rebuilt later. So whether it be a tram that has survived because it was a garden shed only to be turned back into a tram again, or a phone that has only survived because it was a table lamp only to be turned back into a phone again, it's exactly the same kind of life cycle of things. But the most important thing is that the thing survives in the best way it can. So yeah, I mean, I remember when they had the Gateshead Garden Festival, and there was a sponsorship deal with British Steel to restore the tram that you now know at Crouch as MET331, the centre entrance Feltham car. But when it left London, that tram, it was sold to Sunderland and became Sunderland number 100. And when they had the garden festival at Gateshead, they had a number of trams from Crouch that went to the garden festival at Gateshead, and there was a sponsorship deal with what was then British Steel, that they would sponsor basically the restoration of that tram, because it was a non-runner. It did not run for many years. Don't think it ever run in preservation, and they were going to sponsor the restoration of it for it to be restored as Sunderland 100, and in time for it to go to Gateshead and run at the garden festival. And Crouch restored it over a number of years in time for the garden festival, and they outshocked it in red and cream, beautifully painted as Sunderland 100. And the people from British Steel came along and went, oh, fantastic job, but it needs to be painted blue and white for us, because that's our house colours, and we want it in an advertising livery. And they said, well, it's a historic vehicle, we've painted it in the correct in the correct colours. We always paint our tram the correct livery. No, we've paid for the restoration of it. We think we should have it whatever colour we want, and we want it painted in blue and white. So it was quickly taken back into the workshops and painted this blue and white, very untraditional for a tram, with lining on it that looked like it was kind of O-gauge lining on an N-gauge model, really thick lining out on it, because that's how British Steel wanted it. And there was a massive hoo-ha about it, a massive hoo-ha. They should not have been allowed to do this. This sponsorship deal should never have been allowed to happen. And a lot of people were saying they should never have been allowed to do this. You can't be having sponsorship deals like this. It's just wrong. It's sacrilege. But my viewpoint of it is this: if British Steel had not sponsored that tram, it would still be a pile of rusting parts in a shed to this day. They spent, I think it was over £100,000 in the sponsorship of that restoration. The Christ did a brilliant restoration job on it. The workshop team did a fantastic job on it. Who really cares if it's got to be painted a silly colour for a year? Yeah? Just while it's at Gateshead for a year. Who cares? If British Steel want it pink with yellow dots on, let them do it. Because at the end of the day, the thing has been restored, and if they want to pour an extra layer of paint on it to advertise British Steel for you, that's fine. Pour an extra layer of paint on it, because it's an extra layer of protection on the metalwork apart from anything else. It's at least, treat it as an extra undercoat for next year. Who cares if they want it blue and white, if they want it pink and yellow? Who cares if they want it pride rainbow stripes? It doesn't matter. What matters is that the thing is preserved and has been restored. Somebody's giving you the money to restore it. Okay, it would have been nice if they'd said, yeah, we can just have an Imperial style advert on the sign and keep it in Sunderland colours, yeah. But if the deal breaker is what colour do you paint it, what does a coat of paint matter, really? So that's the way I look at it. And of course now it runs, as it happens, when it came back from Gateshead, they didn't redo it as Sunderland 100, they then did it as MET 331, which is as you see it today. But it caused a huge uproar, and I really can't see the reason why. Because at the end of the day, they'd paid a lot of money, the thing had got restored, and if they want to paint it a daft colour for a while, who cares? I mean, there's a lot of preserved railways that do stuff for film and television and that, and they'll paint a loco or some rolling stock in a weird colour for a while. I remember going to the Nene Valley Railway many years ago, it must be about 30 years ago, and I went to the station on the Nene Valley Railway, and it was like something out of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Everything was painted weird pastel colours. It was like a Toy Town railway, but in reality. And the train came along, and the train was painted weird pastel colours. There was a goods train in a siding with box vans, and there was like a pale blue box van and a pink box van, an orange box van, and a lime green box van, and the signal box was painted strange colours, and the station building was painted strange colours, and it was all like weird pastel-y Toy Town colours. And I said to one of the volunteers, said, what on earth is going on here? And they said, oh, we've had a lot of money given to us by an advertising company making an advert for a paint company, somebody like Dulux or something like that, and they wanted to show lots of different colours of paint off in an eye-catching and an unusual way, you know, to make a statement on this advert. They said, and the way we look at it, everything's got painted for free, and part of the deal is that they're going to paint it all back when they film the advert in a few days' time. So everything's basically got a free coat of paint. We've just got to have a silly pink train for a couple of weeks, he said, but we can live with that in return for a few £1,000. Yeah. So yeah. Dominic says, are you sure you didn't go to Bourneville instead of Peterborough, Andy? No, Dominic, it was definitely at Peterborough. It was definitely in the Dean Valley at Peterborough. It's going back a long time. It's 30, 31, maybe 32 years ago. But yeah, and I never saw the advert. I watched the telly religiously to try and hopefully see the advert, and I never ever saw the advert, so I don't know what happened to it. But yeah, but that was done. Again, I wish I'd taken a photo, but of course it was before we had camera phones and stuff like that, and I just didn't have a camera with me at the time. But I wish I'd taken a photo. Somebody must have got a photograph of it, because it really was like, it all did look like baby's first railway. If you can imagine, like a railway colour scheme designed by Fisher Price, that's what it was. And it looked so bizarre. But the other but Dominic says it reminds me of GBRF paying to paint some Class 50s in their own livery for rail tour work, which wound up a lot of people. Yes, but that's the idea, isn't it? There's no such thing as bad publicity. What railway was it that had a Great Western loco? And I'm not sure, but I wanted to say City of Truro. Where does City of Truro live? And it was one of the big preserved railways. And I think it was an April Fool thing. And they got City of Truro. And it was due a fairly major overhaul. You know, boiler off, all that kind of thing. Take it apart into a million bits, reassemble it some years later, put it back out again. So it was due a fairly major overhaul. And it was in Great Western, lined out green. Still looked good, but it was due for overhaul, so it was all going to get taken apart. So what they did for this April Fool thing, I think it was an April Fool, they painted one side of it black, in BR black. And I think they probably only did undercoat. I don't think they did gloss. I think they just did undercoat, just quickly. Lined it, took a photo, put it out in the press. From now on they were going to run this engine, and because it's such a famous locomotive with steam enthusiasts and people on the bloody Great Western and that, and all these greisers, everybody was up in arms. What have they done to City of Truro? What have they done to City of Truro? But thousands of people marched down to that railway and paid their admission fee to that railway to go and be aghast at what they'd done to City of Truro. And the railway was laughing because they got a load of free publicity. A load of people had gone along to see what had happened that wouldn't have gone along anyway. They took an admission fee off them, and to cap it all, by the time these people got there, by the time it had been released to the press, the guys at the railway had completely disassembled City of Truro for its overhaul. So the locomotive effectively wasn't there. It was in a million pieces in lots of parts bins all over the all over the shed. So you couldn't find it. You went and looked for it. You couldn't find it, basically. And I think, I'm fairly sure it was City of Truro, but somebody will know the answer to this one. Dominic or somebody will know the details of this, I'm sure. But again, it's a good few years ago. Dominic says, I remember seeing a photo of it somewhere. I think it was the Severn Valley did it. Looked quite smart, unbelievable too. Yeah, it was somewhere like the Severn Valley. It was one of the big ones. It might have been the Severn Valley. But yeah. I think it's at the NRM now, or Railway Museum, as the current management muppets call it. Yes. Why has the National Railway Museum suddenly just become the Railway Museum? Why has the National Tramway Museum become Christ's Tramway Village? I've got no idea. Tell you, this is the thing about Christ. They changed the logo. They used to have a logo that was a tram in a kind of bottle sort of thing, and this marketing woman came along. She got paid a lot of money to come and be a marketing manager, because they suddenly decided they needed a marketing manager, although they'd never had one before. So they paid her twice the money that any of the other paid staff were getting paid. And she came along and she decided she was going to change the logo, and she came up with a thing called the action stop. If any of you went to Christ at a certain period in the 90s, you'll remember the action stop logo. And it was universally hated by everybody. So they changed it again to a thing that said Tramway Museum between two lines, and the idea was the lines were tram tracks. And that was the new logo, and everybody was to use this logo. What they never spotted was there were two versions of the logo, one in uppercase and one in lowercase, and nobody at the Tramway Museum spotted that half the logos and the advertising of that were in uppercase and half were in lowercase. How about that for getting your branding right? Nobody spotted there were two different versions of it. And I've got no idea what they use as a logo or thing now. Like I say, it was doing stuff like that made me think, you know something, I've got better things to do with my time. But yeah, I don't know what's wrong with calling the National Railway Museum the National Railway Museum. I don't know what's wrong with calling the National Tramway Museum the National Tramway Museum. Dominic says the NRM have closed their workshop for some bizarre art installation, I think. They even want to demolish some old railway buildings for their refurbishment. Yeah, well, when they start doing things like that, you have to wonder if they can really call themselves a museum anymore. Yeah. National collections, big museums are bad news. They really are. They don't look after the items that they have in their collection. And a really good example of that is what has recently happened with, is it the British Museum it's happened with, where a load of stuff had been pinched and they didn't even realise. A load of artefacts had been stolen and they didn't even realise it for a long time. Yeah. The museums I like are the little museums that often are run entirely by volunteers, very hand to mouth, and have really interesting eclectic collections. They have no particular collection policy. They just get stuff taken to them and they think, we're a museum, we need to save it. And I don't know if it's still there, I'm hoping it is, right down on the south coast, down in Kent, in a place called Lydd, Lydd, little town, not much of anything in Lydd at all, but it had the most brilliant little local museum I have ever been in. Really, really good, staffed by volunteers, only open about 2 days a week. Very few people visit it, very few people know it's there, very few people visit Lydd full stop, I think. But a brilliant museum, full of interesting stuff. super diverse, bit of everything, all things that people remember. Really enthusiastic volunteer staff. Not massively big, but because it's so rammed full of stuff, and they take the time to explain stuff to you and even demonstrate certain things working, you can spend hours in there. So to the team at Lyd Museum, who I visited probably mid-2000s when a friend of mine lived nearby, well done guys, you're doing it right. Dominic says, I stumbled across an old 12th century chapel run in Thurso, and this woman was using her spare time to run tours around the chapel grounds. Brilliant, and not paid a management fee. Yeah, they are the sort of people. Every September, in fact, I don't even know if it's today actually, it might be next weekend. Every September, English Heritage do a thing called Heritage Open Days, where people with any kind of heritage asset are encouraged to fling the doors open and let people in. And all the places that you can normally go to, like castles and stuff, they get involved and do it and stuff. But also private places, like maybe factories that are still working factories, just on that weekend a year, where they would normally not let the public in at all because it's a working factory. Just on that weekend a year when they do Heritage Open Days, they do have like an open day and let the public in and let you have a look round. And there are people that do walking tours. I've done walking tours around Sheffield for Heritage Open Days before now, and it's just a brilliant thing, Heritage Open Days, and it doesn't cost anything. All the things are open for free on Heritage Open Days and that. You can make a donation if you want to. It's a brilliant thing, and it brings so many people who are interested in heritage and history and stuff together, and are interested in preserving stuff together. It's a brilliant thing. Probably the best thing that English Heritage actually do is Heritage Open Days. It's a really, really good do. And I'm just so busy these days I don't get a chance to do much of anything with it, but I would love to do something again with Heritage Open Days, because they just are brilliant people, and they sort out insurance for you. If you've got a building or something that you want to open as part of Heritage Open Days, they will sort out insurance cover for you for the day and stuff like that. Absolutely brilliant. Check them out, Heritage Open Days on the web, Google them. Dominic, oh no, I've read that one. Wesley says, I worked at Dungeness on a job 20 years ago and stayed near Lyd. It was a lovely area. Were you in the power station, Wesley, at Dungeness? That's a very strange place, Dungeness. Really, really weird atmosphere at Dungeness. I like Dungeness, but my friend who used to live there always used to say Dungeness has got a weird vibe to it, and absolutely hated going onto the beach at Dungeness because it is really strange, a really strange landscape, that beach at Dungeness, and the only thing for miles around is this massive nuclear power station. Oh, Blubber Brother is with us. He says, thunder and lightning here. Excellent. Always good, isn't it? A bit of old thunder and lightning. Always good for a giggle. I'm just reading, seeing what I've missed. Owen says he was working at the power station. Gambo says it's a travesty then, blubber brother. Is that about the very expensive phones, Gambo? And Dominic says, and of course the railway is well worth visiting down there. Yeah. I tell you a story about Lyd. I think I've told this story on here before, but it's a long time ago. And this came to me via Lyd Museum. And I say, they're brilliant in Lyd Museum. But Dungeness is now famous for the nuclear power station, some old sort of fishing shacks, some of which are made out of old railway coaches on the beach, and also being one of the terminuses of the Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway, the little 15-inch gauge sort of miniature railway that operates down there. But Lyd, which is nearby, did at one point have a full-size railway. I think it closed as part of Beeching in the 60s. Not sure about that, but I think it did. But certainly in World War II, Lyd had its own station, and it was operating this station. And one night there was a train, a steam train, of course back then, 1940s, early 1940s, standing in Lyd station. And a German aircraft was following the railway lines to Lyd, because it was following this railway track back to the coast so it could go back across the channel to France and Germany. It had dropped all its bombs on God knows where, probably London, and it was on its way back. So this very keen pilot of this German aeroplane realised he was following the railway tracks, and he realised there was a train in Lyd station. He could see it in the moonlight. So he dived on it and opened fire. It must have been a bomber escort plane, I think, you know, something like the German equivalent of what we would have had as a Spitfire. You know, like a fighter escort for the main bombers. So he dives on this train and opens fire. And the idea is to basically take out the train, kill all the people on the train, take out the train, make it explode, whatever. Well, his bullet, one of his first bullets that he fires, is a direct hit on the boiler of the locomotive. But rather than the boiler exploding, it just pierced a hole in it, and a jet of superheated steam came up out of the boiler about 100 foot in the air. The German aeroplane flew through this jet of superheated steam stroke water vapour. That got sucked into the air intake of the aeroplane. The engine on the aeroplane failed. The aeroplane crashed, and I believe it killed the pilot. So effectively the train shot down the German aeroplane. True story. The train that shot down the German aeroplane. Not the person, the train that shot down the German aeroplane in Lyd station. Gambo says the travesty is a real 746 phones being turned into lamps instead of the modern replica phones. Yes, it happens. It does happen. The guy at Britphone says one of his best customers is a guy who buys fully restored 746s, because the guy at Britphone puts new cases onto 746s and sells on eBay and stuff. He says one of his best customers buys 20 or 30 phones at a time to turn them into lamps. And of course he sells them because it's a business. And the guy turns them into lamps. But the thing is, there are idiots out there buying them. Why do you want a phone that's turned into a lamp? I do not see the point of a phone that is turned into a lamp. If you want a lamp, why do you not just buy a lamp? Why do you spend £100 or something on a phone that's been turned into a lamp? Why don't you just go to, I'm wanting to say Wilco's, but I better not say that now, and spend 10 or 15 quid on a proper table lamp? No idea. No idea. But it seems silly. Why do you turn something into something else when it's already got a use as what it originally was? Why don't you just leave it as what it originally was? It's far less effort to leave it as what it originally was and just sell it. So yeah, no, I can't see the logic in it. I really can't. It's that woman that comes on the telly in an afternoon, Money for Nothing, you know, that programme Money for Nothing that comes on the telly in the afternoon. How does she do that? I can't go into my local waste site, dump it site, recycling site, whatever you want to call it, and just go up to people and say, that thing that you're throwing out there, that looks really interesting, can I have that? I can't do that. They won't let me do that. They won't let you do that. How come she can do that? Although I'm told that in certain parts of the country you can do it. You can like exchange stuff and dump it, and I think you should be able to. I think you should be able to put all your stuff there, and then somebody else who wants it just take it. Because a lot of the time when people are throwing stuff out, it's not because it's broken or anything. It's just because they don't want it anymore. You know, they've moved house or something like that and can't take it with them. This is why I've now got 3 pianolas. But yeah, that's another story. Dominic says, I've heard another case about railways where the armoured miniature train on the Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway fooled a German pilot into thinking he was much higher than he actually was and then crashed. Yes, I've heard that one as well, Dominic. Well remembered, yeah. Because the trains, for those that don't know, the trains on the Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway, the locomotives at least, are pretty much perfect scale replicas of mainline steam engines. And this German aeroplane was flying over one night, and one of these trains was armoured in World War II, but it was done with small armour because it's a small train. It's a 15-inch gauge, but a replica of a 4 foot 8.5-inch gauge train. So it looked like a full-size armoured train, but small. And this aeroplane was flying over. He saw this train, and by the size of what he saw, he thought it was at like 1,000 feet or whatever. It was actually only about 100 feet because it's a tiny little train. It flew the plane into something. But yeah, all sorts of stuff like that happen down there. You can see where the inspiration for Dad's Army came from when you hear some of the stories from places like Lyd in World War II. You can definitely see where the inspiration for Dad's Army came from. Dominic says, I've heard that a lot of these antiques programs, like Bargain Hunt, have BBC bought interesting items strategically placed for the presenters to find. Yes, I do know somebody who's been on Bargain Hunt, and he was talking to me about how it works the other week. I don't know that they do that, but you certainly go round without a camera with you, find an item that you want to buy, you have your expert with you, and you buy the item for whatever amount of money, then the item gets put back on the stall. Then you go back to where they've set up base camp, and when it's your turn to be filmed, because there's not just 2 couples going round an antiques fair in a day, there might be 10 couples for 5 episodes going around the same antiques fair in the day. And what they do is you go and buy your item, it gets put back on the stall, there's a researcher who remembers what stall it's on, a researcher hands over the money to the stall holder for the item, and they say, can we come back later and discover this item? So then come back later with the camera. So the camera only goes to that stall. It doesn't follow the people right around the whole fair. It only goes to that stall where they found something, and they walk up and go, oh, that's a nice vase. Look at this. Expert, can you tell me anything about this? Of course the expert can, because the expert saw the thing 2 hours earlier and has since looked it up on Google. Oh yeah, that's a such and such thing. Yeah, I think it's worth about 30 quid. Yeah. And then they do a bit of haggling with the stall holder and miraculously get it for £30. Make of it what you will. But yes, not quite all it appears to be. And the other one, Antiques Road Trip, they definitely do not travel in the vintage car. The vintage car appears at the location on a low loader. The crew, including the experts, appear in a minibus. They get the cameras out of the back of the minibus. The experts get into the vintage car. They drive the vintage car round the block, pull up outside the antique shop. Oh, we've arrived at such and such antiques, and go in, and yeah, you think they've gone there in the vintage car, but they haven't. They've driven the vintage car all of 50 yards. Yeah. Sorry if I'm sort of destroying anybody's sort of vision of their favourite programme here. But, Gambo says, I was binning a VCR DVD player as it was beyond repair, and to my surprise there was already one sitting in the electrical waste. I asked if I could have it, and the guy says, I'm walking back to my chair. So I take it you grabbed it, Gambo. And if you sneak it into the car, by the time I turn around to sit down, then I'm none the wiser. Lol. Well, that guy sounds sensible, but you should be able to do that, because recycling stuff's not good. It's always better to just reuse the item as what it originally was, because if you're going to recycle something and melt it down and turn it into something else, then you're using lots of power and resources to do that melting down and turning it into something else. So that's actually quite bad for the planet, because if you've got to remelt down metal, think of how many watts of electricity you've got to use in a massive bloody furnace to melt down some metal. So it's always better to reuse the thing, fix it and reuse it for what it was originally meant for, rather than recycle it and turn it into something else. Always better to reuse something than to recycle it. Blubber Brother says, I can relate to this. This is the most relatable thing on here that anybody has ever said. Well done, Blubber Brother. You get some sort of award for the best comment ever, I think, on here. It says, I really do hate waste. That's why my flat is like a workshop with a bed in it. That's the most brilliant thing. if only you could see more than you can actually see in this camera shot. Um, um, Brother also says, I sold a lovely green 706L last week, as well as an 8756 push button phone. I've just got too many. You never have too many, brother. How many's too many? Yeah, it says best antique show is, what's that? Bears Ferrer on German TV. The spin-off is the bidding room. Yeah, I quite like the bidding room. Apart from anything else, the bidding room's got one of the best theme tunes in the history of television. It's really good. Yeah, I quite like the bidding room. The one that I'm really liking at the moment, and I believe it's fairly real, it's not messed about, is on yesterday on the UK TV network, and it's called Retro Electro Workshop. Is anybody else watching Retro Electro Workshop? It's actually on tonight. There's a repeat of it on tonight of the last episode, and I think it's on at about 11 o'clock tonight. Retro Electro Workshop on yesterday on Freeview and that. It's really good. It's about this guy in Norwich that repairs old electronic stuff, and he went to Radio Caroline and repaired one of their cart machines, and being somebody who's got a cart machine, I know what that's like. But yeah, it's really good. Retro Electro Workshop. It's a brilliant show. He repaired a Sinclair C5 on an episode, a pinball machine on another one. It's just brilliant. I love it. Yeah, guy's based in Norwich apparently. Same place where the quiz of the week came from. Dominic says my house is slowly becoming a workshop too. It wasn't when I visited Dominic. I've actually visited Dominic at home, and his house wasn't a workshop at that stage, but I think when I visited Dominic, I think you'd not been moved in very long, had you? So maybe it's changed now. Yeah, so when I lived in Germany and Holland, I saw some beautiful vintage telephones. Yeah, I think most of them are over here now, Miguel. Yeah, I think at some point from Germany and Holland, a large container must have come over with vintage phones in it, because there seem to be a lot from there that are now over here. Blubber Brother says I've got 3 DVD player recorders that skip. I'll need to open them up and get the cotton buds out. Yeah, if they're skipping, it's probably only dirty heads. You probably just need a bit of isopropyl alcohol on a cotton bud and clean the heads. If we're talking about video recorders though, where the hell have I got the picture on here? If we're talking about video recorders, quickly before we go, because time is getting on, I will try and find you a photo. Oh, I might have taken this photo too recently to be on this computer. Yeah, I think I've taken it too recently to be on this computer. I don't believe it's on here. Right, I've got it on my phone somewhere. Maybe I can just show you it off my phone. I'll have a go. Well, if we're talking video recorders, some of you will know that I have got a number of ex-broadcast video recorders, well, the number has gone up somewhat recently. Oh, it doesn't. I don't know if you can see that, but there's 6 there. 6 low-band U-matic professional video recorders there stacked up, and that's not the entirety of them. That's only a percentage of them. So yeah. U-matic video recorders, digibeta machines, and somebody did come up the other day with a load of 2-inch tape that I got very excited about, because I thought it was quadruplex videotape, because it was on Ampex reels, and it turns out it's multi-track recording studio audio tape that he's trying to get inducted into the British Library or something. He's trying to get them to take it. It came from a recording studio that shut down in Sheffield. So yeah, that's another thing that's happening. So yeah, just all sorts of stuff. But I was having another conversation with another guy the other day. I was at a vintage rally, and there was a guy there with a display, basically of badges. He collects badges, this fella, and he got a load of display cases with badges in. And the conversation I was having with them is, what happens to a person's collection of stuff that they might have spent a lifetime building up when they die? What happens to it? Because chances are the family member that's cleaning your house out probably won't know anything about it, and could well just put it all in the bin. So what happens? And I think there needs to be a museum of collections. I think there needs to be a museum of people's collections where you can donate your whole collection and know that your collection will stay a collection after you're gone. Because so many museums pick and choose stuff, but I think there should be a museum of collections where you can send your collection, preferably before you're dead, really. You know, send it before you're dead and let people enjoy it, and you go and sit there with it and talk to people about it. But yeah, there needs to be a museum that does that. That's what there needs to be. And as far as I know, there isn't one, and maybe I should start one. And you know, all these projects that I was on about, where you get having a discussion about something that goes off at a tangent, and you think, oh, there's something I should do there. That's another one. So yeah. But perhaps there should be a museum, because the other Andrew, if anybody remembers, early part of this year, I went to Wales to visit a guy called Andrew who'd got a very nice, relatively small collection of telephones, but really, really nice stuff. And basically, he gave me a load of stuff, because he said I've got duplicates of this, I've got duplicates of that, I've not got room for it. Can you do anything with it? And I said, yes, we'll take it into the collection, because word, I think, is now getting around that I generally don't sell anything as a general rule, and so people are starting to come to me and say, I've got this collection of stuff, I don't really know what to do with it, but I think it should remain. Can you help me? And so stuff is starting to arrive, and the problem is then I become custodian of it, and then I run out of space and think, how the hell am I going to do this? And something's got to happen. It's got to become some kind of museum, or some kind of society, or something to preserve all this stuff. And that's something that I've been rattling around in my head for a good few months now, on how the hell you do that. There is a brilliant young lad on YouTube, Look Mum No Computer, who's into all electromechanical stuff and that. He generally started with his YouTube channel with synthesizers, you know, music synthesizers and modifying synthesizers and stuff like that. But he started collecting things. I mean, he's got a Strowdy telephone exchange. He's also got an old church organ now that he rescued from somewhere. And he has opened a little museum. It was originally called the Museum of Everything Else. And this is down Kent way somewhere. I think it's Margate or somewhere like that. And I think he's changed the name of it. It's only open on certain days, and you have. Well, you did. I don't know if you still do. You did have to like book an appointment to go on the certain open days. You can only accommodate so many people per day. But I'd quite like to go, but it's miles away from me. But I'd like to know sort of how he did it and that, because I think it'd be quite interesting. But if any of you are down Kent way, I think it's Margate or Ramsgate where it is. It was called the Museum of Everything Else. I think he's changed the name of it now to something that I can't remember. But on YouTube, he's only a young lad, and his YouTube channel name is Look Mum No Computer. Right, I'm just catching up with the chat before we go. Dominic says, regarding recycling, it's also a massive effort to separate all the materials if you're going to recycle something. Yeah, that's another thing that's true, Dominic. You've got to put all that time, effort and energy into doing that, when you could have just not chavelled the thing up in the first place and reused it for what it originally was meant to be used for. Gambo says, I'm still using that VCR DVD today, plus I had the remote, so it was a win, definitely a win. Dominic says his house is slowly becoming a workshop. Yes, Dominic, all the best people's houses become workshops. Look at Big Clive, famous YouTuber. Look at good old Big Clive, one of my favourite YouTubers. I absolutely love Big Clive Live. It's the funniest way to spend a Saturday evening with Big Clive Live and his woofler. Gambo says, I've just discovered Retro Electro last week. Got several episodes in my Sky Cube planner. Yeah, I think there's 14 episodes in the series in total, Gambo, and we must be a good halfway or more through them now, and a lot of them I've missed because it's just on at a time when I'm normally doing something. Dominic says, have you got any playback out of those units yet? Meaning my video records, I think. Some of them I have, Dominic. Yeah, some of them I have. I've got enough of them now. I should have got playback out of some of them, shouldn't I? Yeah, I have, yeah. Blood Brother says, it's over 100 telephones, but I like seeing them being used again. Seeing them back in service is very satisfying. If I've got 100 telephones, it means 98 of them are doing nothing. So you can use 2 of them at once, then. Oh, it's 1 on each ear, I suppose. Dominic says, tapes might have the dreaded sticky shed syndrome with Ampex. Yeah, they probably will, Dominic. Just bake them, though. Just bake them. You put them in a... Well, people say put them in oven. You have to put them in a very, very, very low oven. In fact, the weather we've had this last week, you could probably just leave them in your car, and it would get hot enough in there to bake them for what you want to do. And then when you bake them, you've got about 24 hours before they go sticky again. Dominic says, perhaps there's some way of putting a collection in your will. Yes, but do people always find your will and always stick to your will? Miguel says, all my stuff goes to a good friend with the house. Okay. Is your good friend younger than you, though, Miguel? Or is it going to be a very short-lived sort of transfer of stuff before they have to transfer it on? Because you might not transfer stuff when you die. You might transfer stuff well before you die because you just can't look after it anymore. I mean, people with vintage vehicles, if they get a bit old and infirm and can't do the maintenance anymore, then they get rid of their vintage vehicles and stuff, don't they? And not because they want to, but because they can't look after it anymore. I mean, it's not so bad with telephones, but unless you've got about 1,000 of the blooming things. Blubber Brother says, I've got metal shelving full of 700 vintage telephones right up to the 80s. Also Statesmans and Viscounts. The Viscounts were very good, durable phones. Yeah, they're becoming quite collectible now, Statesmans and Viscounts. It's interesting. Viscounts particularly because they do some funky colours of Viscounts. There's some bright green ones and things. Yeah, but the metal shelving, interestingly, metal shelving to fit telephones last week or week before last, Lidl were having a deal where they'd got these metal shelving units. If any of you have seen me do a show from the loft here, you'll know I've got phones on metal shelving. Metal shelving units very similar to those I've got in the loft. Not quite the same, but very similar. Week before last, I think it was, were on sale in Lidl for about £24 a shelving unit, or 2 shelving units for £40. I bought 2. I've not assembled them yet, but yeah, if you want some shelving units, put phones on, have a look in Lidl, see if they've got any left. Dominic says, I know someone who is a charity lawyer who might be able to help with setting up a charity. Ask them, Dominic. Just ask them the question. You know, tell them what I've said on here tonight, and see what they say, because I've got absolutely no idea how to do it, or what to do, or even if it's possible. So yeah, Dominic, please, when you see them, ask them, because I'd be interested to know. Brother says, a lot of stuff just gets skipped. That is a hideous thought, but it happens. But I don't think telephone collecting is that big a hobby compared to, say, vinyl records or even cassette tapes. Hold the thought with cassette tapes. There's something coming up, possibly next week, possibly week after, about cassette tapes. If you thought I'd got some horrendously big and heavy video machines, for any of you that have seen some of the pneumatic video machines, wait till you see the latest thing I've got to do with cassettes. It's not an ordinary cassette machine, but yeah, there'll be something coming up on that soon. I think patrons may have already seen them. I think I put something on Patreon about them. Rubber says, I'm looking for a Philips Rigonda portable TV from the 70s if anyone has one. One on eBay, a Pi version, but they want you to collect it and it's too far away from me. Blubber Brother, is that Pi TV somewhere sort of between Leeds and Sheffield? Is it? Oh, is it? Is it at Shipley, just north of Leeds, that Pi TV that's too far away from you? The reason I ask is I went to collect some pianola paper rolls from a guy just north of Shipley last week, and he said he had got a Pi Cube TV from the 60s or 70s on eBay. He says, have you seen it? And I haven't seen it, but is it that guy? Because if it is, I've bought something from that guy. But the things that I bought, these piano rolls, they were also collection only from him, because I think he's, from what he said to me, he's clearing out. I think he said it's either his dad or his granddad's house. Again, it's a member of the family that's died, and he's clearing it out, and he's finding all sorts of things. Blood Brother says, I knew a chap that collected televisions. Yeah, I've heard of people collecting televisions. I've heard of people collecting television cameras. You know, if you want something that's really niche. He says, yes, the person who all my stuff gets left to is 21. That's brilliant. That's perfect. So hopefully, your 21-year-old friend Maget will sort of carry on the legacy, which is brilliant. Yeah. Dominic says, I'd love a Sony Trinitron set with wood veneer. I think it's my habit of collecting all things Sony or Pentax. Brother says, it's the importance of bringing younger people into your hobby. They all have to get passed on someday, hopefully to someone as daft as yourself. Yes, but when it's just one person you pass it on to, though, you've always got the worry of what happens to that person. At least if you send stuff to a museum, there's a group of people. It's kind of more secure. I mean, I know some museums go bust and stuff. Transperience is a good example. Yeah, it's an interesting problem. But yeah. So should there be a museum? Should we come together and start some sort of a museum? We'll leave it with Dominic to look into the ins and outs of it, and hopefully, if I get this boat back from Leeds in time, we'll be back here around about the same time, same place next week. I know we've not actually done much on the way of telephone restoration on this. I know the subtitle of the thing says more Batelite telephone repairs, and we've done a little bit, haven't we? Sort of cleaning that case. The case that we... Where is the case that we cleaned? Where's it gone? Here it is. And it still looks reasonably okay. Well, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. I will keep buffing during the week, if you'll pardon the expression, and we will see where we get to by this time next week, perhaps. Hopefully, if I'm back from collecting this boat. If I'm not here this time next week, please send somebody up the Aaron Calder Canal looking for me. We may be adrift. But that is about it from me for now. Thanks very much to everybody for taking part once again. Brilliant stuff going on in the chat today. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, it's been an interesting one. We will be back same time, same place, hopefully next week. Like I say, boats permitting and stuff. Thor is here now, watching a fly flying around, aren't you, Thor? Hello, good boy. We're going out in a minute, Thor. Yes, we are. Yes. See, Thor says yes. So from me for now, have a fantastic week ahead, everybody. We will see you here same time, same place next week. Oh, just one more thing to tell you before we go. From November, we will no longer be here. We will be over on Odyssey from the beginning of November. I will tell you why next week, but if you watch a lot of YouTube videos, what I'm going to tell you next week, you'll not be very happy about. YouTube are changing things. That's why we're jumping ship. So from the beginning of November 2023, this show will be over on Odyssey.com. Odyssey spelled Odyssee. Odyssee. Odyssey.com from the beginning of November. So we've got basically a month and a half left on YouTube. I'll explain why next week. But from me for now, have a fantastic week ahead, and we will see you next time. Bye for now, everybody.